So why is Ford trying to get President Trump to pass a law to keep people from fixing their own cars? Well, because it takes away their autonomy, which is ownership, meaning there is no recurring tax from an outside third party. So as we can see with the definition at the bottom left of autonomy, it says the right, keyword, of self-government. That is a right for each and every human individual of the things that we personally possess. So what we're going to do in this presentation is show how democracy takes that right away from you, strips it from you completely by the use of artificial intelligence. AI chips inside the vehicle monitor its condition and do the thinking for you, which allows Ford to control how information is transmitted. This way they can keep taxing you on the vehicle even after you pay it off. So therefore, you have no autonomy or ownership over the things you pay for concerning this vehicle, where your energy is harvested for the benefit of another, sort of like the analogy concerning a leech or a vampire, which is taxation at the end of the day. This is the very same thing we see today concerning the Democratic Party and its relationship with the black community that has been in effect for generations. So let's do a recap on this information, just to bring us up to speed to help tie everything together. So, like I said, this is just a recap on previous information that I brought out in a previous presentation. So, democratic capitalism. It says, democratic capitalism is a political and economic system that integrates resource allocation by marginal productivity. And this right here is pretty much democracy wrapped up in a nutshell, where it presents a sense of entitlement, which we're going to break down in this presentation concerning artificial intelligence. So, continuing in the article, with policies of resource allocation by social entitlement. Like I just said, the policies which characterize the system are enacted by democratic governments. And at the bottom, the implementation of democratic capitalism typically involves the enactment of policies expanding the welfare state. So let's take a look at these policies, right? The Democratic Party, where the powers that be tell you how to think while monitoring you as they extract your resources and life force energy. And artificial intelligence is designed to further implement both of these policies at once. Certain dependencies are set up such as food stamps, Section 8 housing, child support, wage garnishment, which creates a sense of entitlement, and other mechanisms are used such as disenfranchisement, Jim Crow laws to keep you marginalized and under surveillance. One of the key components for democracy to properly function is to keep your mind distracted by way of entertainment while your resources are being extracted and harvested.
You want to keep loving your body, you know who to vote for. Hey!
Coochie crumbs for Kamala. Hoes for Harris. This is some embarrassing shit, y'all. Why are y'all voting for this shit, man?
Queen. Let's get the definition. It says verb at the bottom, number 1 bullet point. Behave in an unpleasantly superior way towards someone. We see this all throughout the black community. I mean, this is self-explanatory, especially after third and fourth wave feminism was introduced. But let's go down to number 2, right? A pawn. What is a pawn, you might ask? I'm sure you've heard the word before, but let's go ahead and get the definition, right? I don't have it on screen, but I'm gonna just read it. Number 1, noun. A chess piece of the smallest size and value. Number 2, a person used by others for their own personal gain. A matriarchy, where the woman is a pawn under democracy, and the men are her soldiers and attack dogs who defend her honor. This has lowered the IQ and critical thinking capabilities across the black community for generations. For the longest time, the black community has had the weakest mindset of entitlement under the system of democracy, which breeds narcissism across the community. And what are the 2 main characteristics of narcissists? Number 1, envy, and number 2, entitlement. And when you combine these 2 things together, it is a recipe for disaster. So what is the main thing that is being extracted from black people by way of entitlement? that is rooted in democracy, our souls. What is a soul? Your thought process, your mind, your spiritual essence. Everything else that is tangible is an extension of the mind. Let's get a real-life example pertaining to the demonic music industry that actually ties into this. One of the most demonic influences on the black female youth today, Sexyy Red. Her music producer, which is responsible for all her hits, Tay Keith, just died the other week. He was found dead in his apartment. He was in the process of filing a lawsuit against Sexyy Red and her label for unpaid royalties worth millions of dollars for his contribution towards her music. But as we know, Israel, there is no honor amongst thieves. Tay Keith knew what he got himself into when he signed up to be a part of this demonic music industry under the banner of democracy. It's been reported that Sexyy Red had Tay Keith sacrificed and her music label being behind it, so Sexyy Red can continue to be used as a pawn to further push the matriarchal concept within the system of democracy to continue the extraction of more souls. Now we're going to look at a more sinister type of covetousness and how this way of thinking is a predecessor for the use of artificial intelligence to help further push democracy.
Yo, dog, you know what it is, dog. Big up yourself, bruv. You done know Drizzy Drake, dog.
Yeah, you know, I mean, chilling, man. You know, I just been like vibing out, you know, Carter 4 and store. That's it.
Yeah, yo, you know what it is? Luxury, cosmic lifestyle. What the fuck you dummies that still in the fish? Guys not getting rinsed out like this. Come on, dude. That is fucking basic, pal.
Don't have the keys. Ask the guy inside. Who? The Secret Service. They're right in the door. What?
Drake debuted as a rapper in 2006 when he released his first mixtape, Room for Improvement.
I was rooting for you! We were all rooting for you! How dare you!
But apparently, he felt he had room for improvement in the identity department as well, because throughout his career, he's gone on to fake a slew of different accents, personalities, and cultural backgrounds, all in an effort to stay at the top. All while maintaining a terrible case of arrested development, even up to this day at his big age of 37 years old. And honestly, one of his newer songs, Search and Rescue, in hindsight sounds like a huge cry for help and admission of arrested development. In the past 18 years since Drake first became a rapper, he's slowly morphed into the master of plagiarism, arrested development, fake accents, culture colonization, and stolen personalities. Remember when Kendrick Lamar said, "Let me put y'all on game, you not a colleague, you a colonizer, etc., and not like us"? Kendrick was probably sitting on that verse for years, because Aubrey Drake Graham, aka Drake, has been copying other people's entire likenesses and plagiarizing people's entire lives since day one of his career. Kendrick was probably waiting in the shadows for years to say you're not a colleague, you're a colonizer. The first couple million straws for me, before the straw that broke the camel's back, were all the accents I saw him fake for years. And if, like me, you're on the early end of Gen Z, you saw Drake's entire career and you saw British Drake, Caribbean Drake, Atlanta Drake, and now Smino Drake. Now, take that information and fast forward to today. With Drake in complete culture vulture mode 24/7, at this point, the list is endless of Drake copying black artists, and this is the reason why any little tiny thing Drake does, like putting a do-rag on Adonis, is immediately added to the dumpster fire and labeled more and more of Drake plagiarizing. Now, when I first heard these verses, I immediately knew Kendrick won the beef. And you can imagine how happy I was to finally hear these lyrics, seeing that I've been saying Drake is a copycat, plagiarizing colonizer for years. Whether Drake is doing an interview or recording his next song, he's notorious for changing the way he speaks and imitating actions and mannerisms from other cultures that are not his own, no matter how much he tries to convince you that it's okay for him to do this. Oh, poor him. But how does that explain him having a fake Caribbean accent in one of his biggest songs? I need a one dance. Oh yeah, because Drake wanted us to believe, for the time being, that his half-black side was West Indian, because that type of music was really popping off at the time. And no, Drake's dad is not West Indian. But first, let's go over all the accents Drake has used throughout his entire career. After all these accents, we'll get even more into his colonization. In 2009, Drake introduced his Southern accent. Yes, Drake's father is from Memphis, Tennessee, but that does not justify anything because you don't see me faking a St. Lucian accent just because my mom grew up there. But maybe it's fine. Maybe Drake was just getting back to his roots. Maybe he was finally gonna stop stealing other culture and embrace his own. Nope. Because next up is Drake's Caribbean accent. Drake felt 100% comfortable to do a full-blown Caribbean accent. And you might think it's full-blown, but it would get even worse in the coming years. Rihanna and Drake first collabed on What's My Name, while Drake was still pretending to be from the South. They also collabed in 2011 on Take Care, and in the parts where Drake sings, you can sense a slight Caribbean accent because he's collabing with Rihanna, but other than that, he's still acting like he's from the South in the rest of the rapping parts in the song. Then a few months later, Views came out, and Drake was out of nowhere, straight from the islands, in Controlla, One Dance, and Too Good. Like, why all of a sudden he's like, Controlla? All of a sudden, he was the third member of the Island Boys. I also sense a Nigerian accent on Controlla when he says, them girls, they just wanna take my money. If you don't remember in 2016, when Controlla was released, artists like Jadena, who is Nigerian American, were blowing up, and this is most likely why Drake felt the sudden urge to make these songs. All of a sudden, he was African one day and Caribbean the next. And you probably remember the 2015 song Classic Man by Jadena, which ironically features Kendrick Lamar on the remix. Drake colonizing black culture has always really grinded my gears and made me extremely uncomfy. I used to be a Drake fan, like I said, but after you hear Drake fake his 10th accent of the week, it really gets old. And like I said, my mom is from St. Lucia, but imagine tomorrow I became a rapper or R&B singer and all of a sudden deleted all these YouTube videos so no one would have a trace of my real accent and started using a thick St. Lucian accent to try to overtake Tyla and other people on the rise because Tyla's South African image threatened me. And all of a sudden, I need to do everything in my power to be seen as more cool and exotic than Tyla. And also, for some reason, I randomly started completely from left field, started talking, acting, and dressing like I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, when I'm not from there either. I don't really know where that ties in, Drake. And then I start flip-flopping between the two every few months. And then randomly start becoming British. The thought of me doing something like Drake gives me the heebie-jeebies. And that is why I absolutely hate that Drake does this and has been doing this for years. And I'm genuinely disturbed at the fact that Drake can do all this culture stealing and never himself get the heebie-jeebies once, and he sleeps perfectly well at night knowing exactly what he's doing. And I'm extremely happy that he's finally being called out for it because it was getting to the point of ridiculous. Because who knows what accent he would have faked next if he was never called out. Now, what is Drake guilty of besides stealing all these different accents, cultures, and putting do-rags on his son? Well, first of all, you probably remember in 2023 when Drake started looking like this. From Drake's heart hairstyle to his OVO owl braids, the internet has talked a lot about Drake's different hairstyles. But this one he wore while hanging out with Kevin Durant really had people in uproar, and not for the right reasons. People were in uproar on Twitter because they were just calling Drake corny for this hairstyle, but they should have been in uproar because once again he was leeching and stealing, but this time from an artist named Smino. It took majority of people an extremely long time to realize this Drake hairstyle that had so much buzz around it was also stolen. But once Kendrick called Drake a colonizer, people started to realize things like this more and more evidence was coming out of the woodwork day by day. In May 2024, someone tweeted, when Drake colonized Smino's hairstyle, crying laughing face. Some people clocked this right away though, before Kendrick even said anything. Just look at this video from a TikToker named Ashanti from October 2023.
I just don't understand, how does Drake wake up every day and not be embarrassed that he's cosplaying a whole nother grown man? It's so embarrassing. Like, the secondhand embarrassment I've been getting from Drake lately, like these past 2 months, is just, it's so uncomfortable. Like, I just want him to be silent and mysterious.
And this TikTok from August 2023.
Okay.
And this was August, the same month that Drake first did the Smino hairstyle. So yeah, not everyone was fooled, Drake.
A lot of people are confused on where the Drake hate or why a lot of people have switched up on Drake lately has come from. The thing that Drake did wrong this time is he took the wrong person's personality. And I'm about to explain what I mean by that. So since Drake has came into the industry, he's always attached himself to different artists. He'll take on their personality, ride their way for a little bit, and move on to the next. And I feel like at first, you know, we didn't really clock him doing this. It was more of like, oh, Drake always putting somebody on. We didn't really realize like, okay, he's just taking their personality and then moving on to the next.
Drake sees these black artists from around the world and immediately needs to be them to surpass them.
Why would Drake be himself when he can just pretend to be a bunch of other people? Because this is what Drake has become over these past 10 years or so. He sees a culture that has a buzz and that he has no genuine appreciation for, and attaches himself to it like a leech for clout, validation, and financial gain. He did it with the UK scene, the reggaeton scene, the Caribbean scene, and now the Atlanta scene.
I remember back then, people was layering the songs on top of each other, and it matched perfectly because Drake was stealing flows that bad. And that's what happened. X was locked up. X was going through all these legal issues. Drake stealing his flows. X behind bars, he getting calls like, yo, this Drake song sound like, look at me, this sound like your sound. This is your music.
Drake.
Okay.
Drake hit up a DJ that I fuck with, you feel me? And bruh told me, he was like, yo, Drake, watch your interview. He said he with you and he fuck partner Ski Mask. He's like, yo, he's saying he go call your manager within the next few days.
Okay.
So I'm amped up. Nigga, I fuck with Drake.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I knew what I was doing when I said what I said, and I knew how to approach him. Because I know where he can't beat me at.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So initially, he was supposed to contact one of my managers. So he doesn't do it. That same week, bro, I go on to, well, I can't go on to it obviously because I'm locked up.
Yeah.
I'm on the Securus phone, you feel me, for this shit.
So you in jail, he's supposed to contact your manager, and then what happened?
He dropped a video, a preview in Amsterdam. I was on the phone with my dog, Chris. He was like, yo, you gotta listen to this Drake. That's exactly what he said. I hear da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, what the f? As soon as it started, like I knew he was getting that. And the funny thing is, we didn't discover it. The fan, like you said, the fans, because they're so cold. Like, it's like, I got a piece of the internet, you feel me?
So they were saying that Drake was biting your style.
He's not a man. I think that's a big move.
Demon just got out of can. I gave my bro in advance. Love is just not in my pants. Ayy, can't keep my dick in my pants. Ayy, my bitch don't love me no more. Ayy, she get me out on like bro.
Drake has a sense of entitlement, and it goes deeper than just music. It's called covetousness. Drake is a soul harvester. Drake is the epitome of a legion of spirits. Drake is a soul collector.
You know that saying that imitation is the most highest and sincerest form of flattery? Well, it's actually a lie. That's what the world wants you to believe. Imitation of another person, emulating another person, is actually witchcraft. First, I'm going to be giving you the biblical definitions of what it means to imitate and emulate a person. Then I'm going to give you the scriptures, and then I'm going to give you the word that the Lord gave me in April 2023. To emulate is to imitate. Emulations, as used in some older translations of the Bible, is an obsolete word meaning jealous competition or ambition driven by envy. Sinful emulation is a greed-driven desire to imitate someone's success or share their wealth. It is a keeping up with the Joneses immersed in covetousness. Galatians 5:19-21 says, now the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. In 1 Corinthians 4:16, 11:1, and in Philippians 3:17, Paul repeatedly instructed believers to follow him as he follows Christ. We as Christians should be emulating Jesus as he emulates the Father. As it says in John 5:19, Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, the Son does likewise. John 14:12, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I am going to the Father. Sinful emulations in KJV version are related to covetousness, strife, and strong negative emotions. As it says in Proverbs 27:4, wrath is cruel, anger is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Hearts full of emulations, aka jealousy, caused Joseph's brothers to try to take him out, to try to unalive him, as it says in Genesis 37:4. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. When we desire to emulate or harbor jealousy towards others, we cannot live in love and humility as God commands. Simple emulations will not accomplish God's purpose in our lives, and we are to avoid the attitude of envy or jealousy to live in our hearts. Emulation, imitation, trying to be like someone, trying to act like someone, copying someone, what they do, how they act, how they speak, how they dress, how they wear their hair, how they wear their nails, all these things. It's identity theft. It's witchcraft. God didn't make us all unique. God didn't make us all different for us to try to copy others, to try to be like someone else, to try to steal another person's identity. Identity theft is much deeper than someone just stealing your information. There are evil people out here. They want to be you.
Today I wanted to talk to you about something that is really important to understand when dealing with narcissists in any capacity, and that is that narcissists are thieves. While the definition of a thief generally refers to stealing something tangible from another person, like something that's real that you could touch, the taking of anything from someone without their knowledge or permission is stealing. This is what narcissists do. Narcissists are mimics, performing skills and abilities that they don't actually have. They may believe that they do have these things, but they don't. And in the end, this always shows through. Always. Imitation can only go so far. A butterfly may have a pattern that looks like the eyes of a big scary predator, but if you engage with the butterfly directly, you will find that it is only a butterfly after all. Imitating a surgeon might fool people with no medical knowledge or people who are not really paying attention, but it falls apart as soon as anybody tries to engage with it in any real way. Imitation is not reality. It's not even fantasy. It's literally just a performance of something that's not true. That stands up to no scrutiny at all. In this same vein, people dealing with narcissists very often feel that imitation. They can see it.
Let's get the definition of a mimic, right? It says at the top, mimics often have clown-like faces due to their association with deception and performance. Okay, two key words here. Deception, performance. The exaggerated features of clowns' faces, such as bright colors and large smiles, can mask their true intentions, making them appear less threatening. And what was just brought up is that Drake is a harvester of souls by way of his mimic and copycat behavior. So let's further expose something here. "13 Rothschild families." So, as we can see, Drake has mocked black people to their faces. So starting at the top left, it says, owned by the Rothschild Khazarian Mafia death cult, McDonald is linked to child trafficking, cannibalism. Innocent children are ritually sacrificed to Moloch and Lucifer, grounded up into hamburger hash browns, and served right back to the ignorant Goyim, cattle, as fast food, meaning American people. We are literally being made to eat our own children. And to the right it says, Epstein had a bank account titled Ball. The Epstein files are public records, just throwing that out there in case anybody wants to look into it. I believe it's public. Correction.
I don't know what reality I'm living in, but apparently this doesn't make sense. You have a bunch of white men that got caught in one of the biggest PDF rings of all times, and none of them went to jail, and you actually believe the crime statistics? You actually believe these white people would charge each other for crimes? That is crazy. And they're over here telling you 13% of the population, 50% of the crime. Y'all don't even charge each other for crimes.
Of course they don't, because those working together under the banner of democracy never hold each other accountable. Now, let's see how everything that has been brought out so far, especially Drake's mindset and way of thinking, ties into artificial intelligence. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's get the definition for artificial. And bullet point number 1, it says, a copy of something natural. And let's look at the synonyms below to kind of really get a better understanding, an in-depth understanding of just how frivolous this word artificial is, right? It says false, fake, exaggerated, which we can see to the right. Just stuff all over the place. Because with something that's not authentic, it's either doing too much and not doing enough. Pseudo, okay? Plastic, theatrical, which is very true. It's just a bunch of glitter and glamour to put on the appearance to make people believe that it's something that it's really not. Very surface level. There's nothing in depth or deep about it. Forced. Yep, it seems forced. Let's drive this part home with some commentary and then we'll come back. And then the last few synonyms: bogus, cute, pretended, phony.
Humans are starting to rely on AI too much, from work to writing text messages to mental health counseling. It's a not so quiet tech epidemic. We're not thinking anymore. We're prompting, copying and pasting, and reviewing work that AI has done for us. And whether you've been concerned by this trend or think it's kind of harmless, we have 2 hot off the press studies from different research institutions that are digging into how AI adoption may be making us dumber. So let's unpack how ChatGPT might be impacting our cognitive abilities today. 2 major research studies from MIT and Carnegie Mellon are suggesting that over-reliance on LLMs may be starting to subtly reshape our brains, weakening our memory, lowering our engagement, and all around making things more fragile. So with this new research, I thought, what better time to unpack the hidden costs of AI reliance and AI convenience, and what it ultimately means for our minds. Every leap in technology, of course, has trade-offs. Socrates warned that writing would ruin our memory, and I think we all had teachers in middle and elementary school who would fear the fact that we were using calculators because it would decline our math skills. But right now, what we're seeing is that AI isn't just helping or assisting in our thinking. Some people are using it to do the thinking entirely for them. And the big question from that is, what are we losing in that process? If you're new here, my name's Kate Cassidy. I work in the tech industry, helping brands evolve to this fast-changing space and working on these platforms themselves. But outside of my professional career, I really like to dig into what are the actual impacts of this technology in our day-to-day lives. And so that's why I make these videos on the intersection of media and tech and culture and how they all intertwine. So if you're interested in these sort of topics, then you know you're in the right place. So let's start with the MIT study. And forgive me, this video may be a little choppy because I want to make sure that I get the details right. But the MIT study was essentially framed looking at 3 different groups for this study. It was a small sample size, only around 54 people, but researchers then tracked these 3 different groups, one using ChatGPT, one using just Google search and one using, God forbid, just their brains to write essays on a number of different topics. And they were honestly pretty interesting topics like philosophy and other ethical implications, things that really involve a lot of deep critical thinking. So really interesting study. I will link it all down below for you to read the research yourself. Throughout the study, they used EEG and brain scanning to actually look at the neural connectivity and other signals that they were seeing in the brain itself. So very much like a physical study in addition to the qualitative analyzing of the essays. And here's what the study found. The ChatGPT group and the group that was encouraged to rely on AI had lower frequency on all counts when looking at the EEG results. I am not a neuroscientist and nor do I pretend to be, so again, you can reference the research, but essentially what they found was there was lower brain engagement across the board. Over the course of the study and over time, they saw that these essays were getting lazier and lazier, and by the end of the study, this one group was essentially copying and pasting the results from AI. They underperformed on neural, linguistic, and behavioral accounts on all of the different measures that they were studying. On the other hand, the brain-only group, as you may not be surprised, showed the highest brain connectivity and engagement. The EEG scanning picked up neural connectivity, especially in the beta, delta, and theta bands. which is not a sorority or fraternity, but instead it actually indicates things like memory load, creativity, and semantic processing. By the end of the study, this group also showed that they had more pride in their work, and they actually really took ownership of the essays that they had written, reporting higher satisfaction overall with their output because they had used their brains the entire time to come up with the concept, write it out, see it all the way through to fruition. And the Google search group landed somewhere in between. They were still very much cognitively active and saw a lot of levels of engagement. And that's really important to note because we are now seeing more and more people are skipping actually doing the research, actually going to Google, reading a couple different articles, and instead opting just to go to Perplexity or ChatGPT or another LLM that will spit out information for you. So it's important to note that you actually do still get a higher level of cognition, of neural connectivity, if you are doing that additional step of research, not just relying on AI outputs. And then at the end of the study, there was a fun little twist where the researchers actually flipped it on its head and had the groups switch and do the other thing that they had been doing the whole time. So the ChatGPT group was now asked to rewrite some of the essays without relying on any sort of AI. And then the brain-only group now was allowed to use AI for the first time. And what did they find? The ChatGPT group could not remember their own essays. Their reliance on AI and the outputs and essentially turning to copying and pasting by the end of the study had decreased their memory formation, their cognition, and essentially they never encoded the subject that they had been writing about in the first place. So that essay that they had written never really locked into their brain. Instead, what happened was the task was, of course, executed, and maybe you could say that it was more efficient, but it didn't actually integrate any of what they had written about into their memory networks. And I think this is a big area where people are not realizing that starting to really heavily rely on AI for these sort of tasks are actually causing these side effects where you're not actually learning the concept as much, you're relying on AI too much and not actually having those neural pathways be connected and have your brain light up in different ways to encode the information that you are writing about into your actual mind. And as a result, we're kind of all getting dumber because of it. Work days, day to day. And their big takeaway of this study was that people who relied more on AI had less critical thinking skills that they used in their day. If they were just trusting in AI, they were thinking less critically. On the other hand, people who were confident in their own work and found themselves to be competent and trusted themselves, these people actually thought more critically throughout the day. While they may use AI to outsource certain tasks, their own competence allowed them to trust their own outputs, and they used AI more as a tool rather than people who were using AI as a sole output and just relying and trusting in the AI outputs alone. It was found that if used improperly, these technologies actually caused a deterioration in our cognitive faculties. And that's just this big, overwhelming, overarching theme that we are seeing as people start to adopt AI more and more into all facets of their daily life. And that's part of the big irony of this AI automation that we are seeing. By relying on AI and by having people start to use AI for all different outputs, they are no longer practicing judgment. They are no longer practicing discernment. They aren't flexing their critical thinking skills. And as a result, when a situation arises that might require that judgment, that discernment, that critical thinking, people are caught unprepared. AI is starting to shift our roles from actually doing the work to reviewing the output of AI having done the work, which is creating this interesting phenomenon that they're calling mechanized convergence. In other words, everyone's outputs are starting to look the same. We're using the same prompts on the same AI tools and getting the same conclusions and results. And this actually ties back to the MIT study too, because over the period of time, they saw that people who were heavily relying on ChatGPT and essentially copy and pasting those outputs for their essay writing, all of those results of the essays looked very similar. They felt similar, they read similarly, they didn't have a lot of linguistic variance because there wasn't that individuality, that judgment, that personality that was brought in. So saw this in both the MIT and the Carnegie Mellon study.
This is an unfortunate story involving generative AI and a watercolor artist. So this is the artist in question, going by the name Maddie Burnham. And Maddie Burnham is based in Yorkshire and does these gorgeous watercolor illustrations of scenery, the environment, and buildings. But Maddie had posted this 3 days ago, writing, "A scammer based in Vietnam who goes by, and I'm so sorry, Tuan No Chi, creates an AI version of each illustration I make. He then presents them as genuine watercolors under fake profiles, like Paint G Art, and that account is no longer available, or Art by Me Official, which that account is still up." Maddie writes, "There are literally hundreds of examples. My entire portfolio has been copied." And here we can see side by sides where we can see the gorgeous watercolor work of Maddie, and then it gets put through AI. I don't know why AI is adding so many like bluish shadows to everything. These accounts may seem small and harmless on Instagram. However, on Facebook, these fake accounts have hundreds of thousands of genuine followers. Facebook is now so saturated with these AI images that many people cannot differentiate them from the original art it's derived from, aka Maddie's original work. And Google can't tell the difference either. This one is honestly absurd. So this is a Google Lens search of the AI version of Maddie's genuine artwork, and the AI overview says, "This ink and watercolor painting by artist Maddie Burnham depicts Dove College in the Lake District." Except this isn't Maddie's work. This is the AI-generated result of Maddie's work. So the fact that Google is getting this incorrect and flagging AI-generated work as Maddie, and then obviously thus people are going to see this and misattribute the AI work to Maddie and think Maddie made some AI generated imagery when that was not the case. It's spreading misconception. And also this is a complete side note as to why you should not trust the AI overviews overall, because again, they are AI overviews. These are summaries, but not actual fact. And again, even human written articles can be incorrect, but AI is pulling from already written articles, data, whatever, and then compiling it together to a summary for you that can largely be incorrect, and you will not know unless you double check your sources. Maddie adds, they even have Shopify on their side. Shopify has confirmed with me in writing that they are aware it's a fraudulent merchant, but they refuse to remove the store and no longer reply to my emails. So again, you can see the shop name is under Tuan No Chi, but the email is contact@artbyjennifer.store. Oh, who's this? Art by Jennifer, the fake account being run by Tuan. And here, this is the fake Jennifer claiming to be Jennifer Barrett's with all of these watercolor imagery that is not hers. And this is the absurd part, because you go to the Facebook, it's literally 27,000 followers for Maddie's work that was run through AI. That sucks, man. I also think this is funny. Maddie added Shopify's Trustpilot page, which is at 1.1 stars with 1,600 reviews. So Maddie continues. So anyways, that is why so many people think my work is made with AI. On my own, I have very little power to stop it. I will continue to reject this current model of generative AI, continue to call out plagiarism, and continue to support other real human artists. Thank you for reading, Maddie. And in the comments, a user tags Shopify, writing why. Plenty of artists here would like an explanation, including myself, who use your platform. If you know it's fraudulent, then remove the account. And Maddie adds extra context, writing, I have screenshots of all my correspondence with them over the past 12 months. Dismissive and deliberately obstructive. That is honestly so screwed up. The fact that if it is true, right, and I believe Maddie, that Shopify acknowledges the store is fraudulent, but then chooses to leave the store up anyways, it really speaks to like capitalistic greed, where it's like, oh, well, we're going to profit off of this person. So we don't care if they are only, generating a profit through the exploitation of another person's work. We don't care as long as we make money. That is awful. And this is the other impact of AI, right? Beyond just like the blatant theft that it happens from artists, but the direct competition that it creates with the individual artists themselves. Because again, here we have a situation where Maddie has a very, very iconic and notable style. So a scammer came in, made basically a fake white woman with her coloring book page site that is literally all Maddie's work that's stolen, and is acting as a direct competitor to Maddie. Because Maddie has a watercolor coloring book page set, which also I think is absolutely gorgeous and so freaking cool. I suck at watercolors, but I would love something like this, because then it's like watercolors but easier because the lines are already there for me. Look what this freaking fake account has. Coloring book pages that are all AI generated, and very likely it's trained off of Maddie's work, creating direct competition for Maddie. And then secondly, again, diluting the public view of Maddie, because then it's spreading misinformation, and people, like what Maddie is saying, are thinking that these works that are AI generated are done by Maddie. And there might be people who believe that, and then maybe are like, oh, I don't want to follow Maddie because like he uses AI, when he didn't, because it was somebody else that literally stole their work and ran it through AI. But it looks like their work because it was their work that was stolen. That is the harm that it causes at the end of the day. Not to mention the obvious point, Maddie sells prints and Jennifer also sells prints and is blatantly advertising it on the Facebook page. So please go support Maddie, the original artist about all of this. And if you see those fake accounts floating around, don't interact, don't engage. And there are ways that you can flag it as being fraudulent. And next up, I have another thing that I saw that just honestly, my jaw's on the floor. I fear AI has made us truly stupid.